Namaste, nerds. This is Navanad, budget pub stomper, the budget pub stomper, or a budget pub stomper. I'm a guy that normally teaches you how to pub stomp on a $100 budget. Where I know you hear people say, you may hear me say fairly often, well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. But I mean, really, today we are doing something quite a lot different. In fact, we're not doing a budget pub stompy thing at all. Today we're going into the Cedh spice mines. And I'm going to bring you an actual competitively viable deck that I've built for a friend of mine who has played some, well, a good bit of Commander, has played some kind of high power Commander, but who has never played Cedh. So I built the deck for him and ordered a proxied up version from MPC Phil, which is a great place to go. Really high quality, fairly inexpensive. The entire deck with shipping is $40. And the card stock is fantastic. The art is cool. You can customize the art. The card backs aren't like Magic cards. You can kind of select the card art. And it's, it gets the point across that it's a Magic card without actually being like a fake Magic card. Very cool. Not a sponsor, so not going to go too far into MPC proxy, but I will just say, if you're interested in making really quality proxies, remember the entire Cedh community is fully proxy friendly. I mean, virtually everybody in the Cedh community wants to play against you, not your wallet. I've got a full, an actual IRL deck, and I still have real deck, and I still use MPC Fill to buy other decks because I don't want to play the same deck every time, and I don't want to move cards around from the deck every time. So even people that have real decks still in the Cedh community are more than happy to proxy out cards, and MPC Fill is a great way to do that. So I'm doing that for my buddies. So I'm going to put this video on the channel. If it does well, then maybe I'll do more. Like, comment, subscribe, show me that you want to see this kind of stuff in future. This is the first time we've gone into actual Cedh level stuff. Now, this isn't like a tier 1 deck. It's not, but I would say it's creeping into like meta deck territory. It's had some results. Granted, the results have come from I think one pilot who's actually just very good. But still, proof of concept, right? The deck can win in I don't know, especially in the meta that the Cedh meta right now is kind of like a grindy, control-y, mid-range kind of meta. The days of everybody playing a turn 2 Adnaz deck have come and gone. Doesn't work anymore. Or it's harder to get it to work. But creature combos are real good, and being able to grind value is real good, and this deck does both of those things really well. This deck is going to be probably about 10 cards off of a couple of the more, I don't want to say common, but the more, the lists that are most popular, the ones that got the most views. One was done by Comedian MTG. Ian, really good, the pilot I was talking about, who's top tier pilot, who took it to a near top 16 and then maybe a top 4. Maybe he won a tournament with it, I'm not sure, but he's had good results with it. I'm maybe 10 cards off his list. Some of the card choices are just meta choices. Some seem to be differences of opinion. And I guess some of the card choice differences are things that I kind of put in because of the person I'm getting the deck for. I just think they're cards he's going to understand and appreciate, enjoy, prefer. But one of the differences is I'm not just going with the, I think most of the Cedh Etali decks, the people that are trying to play this deck into the Cedh meta, are trying to win with Food Chain combo and trying to win with Temur Sabertooth Dockside combo, and just kind of counting on their ability to close the game out with their opponent's decks when they can exile all the cards and do all the things. But I don't want the person that I'm giving the deck to feel like he has to win that way, because he doesn't understand the meta. He may not know, he can be in a pod with Najeela, Blue Farm, and Rogsai. Maybe he may literally not know how to win the game with their deck. So I included, and he'll figure it out, but for right now I included combos that will just work inside, that are self-contained, that'll work with this deck, where this deck can actually Etali into one piece, tutor into the other. And then I've got some sideboard slots here, where if my buddy does decide, right here, I don't see this in the Etali list, and I am not high on these new lands that are the Surveil lands. A lot of Cedh players are starting to play them. I'm not convinced that that's right. But I kind of think if there's any deck that wants it, like Etali might be the deck that wants it. It's exactly a 2-color deck that cares about the top of its deck. But I digress. We may end up putting these in. I'm going to kind of, these are coming with the order, and I'm going to allow him to decide if he wants to, like, maybe even sub some of the combos out of the deck once he kind of figures out how to beat his opponent with his opponent's decks. But maybe not, because I didn't put bad combos in, and the combos that I did put in layer really well with the game plan. But let's talk about the game plan. First, Etali. Etali is a 7-mana commander. It's a dinosaur. It's not just a dinosaur. It is a mofo elder dinosaur. This particular elder dinosaur, although it is just red, red 5 for its cast cost, is a Gruul color identity because it has this ability of 9 and a green Phyrexian mana. We can transform it into this big-ass 11/11 trample indestructible with, what's it called? It gives poison counters. Which is gross, right? I don't think it's going to come up very much, but it sure could. I mean, especially if we're in like a mid-range grind fest, or if my buddy here is playing against players that really don't know how to close the game, they're new on their decks. I mean, it could make total sense for him to just, because I mean the deck is jam-packed full of mana, so for him to just get his Dino in play, flip it over, and just start deleting busters one by one, I can see this. I could see it coming up in real, like, high-end CDH play. Probably not that much. The main thing is we want to win the game, not so much with our 11/11 or our even 7/7 dragon. We want to win the deck with its ETB triggers. I mean, we want to gain advantage and threaten wins and screw up our opponents by getting this Dino down ASAP. And believe it or not, this CDH version of Etali can pretty consistently drop this turn 2, and very consistently it comes out by turn 3. And then once it has it in play, it's going to keep copying it or copying its ETB trigger, and it's going to be able to, if I didn't say, the ETB trigger is this, right? So when Etali comes to the battlefield, each player flips cards off the top of their library until they run into a non-land spell, and you're allowed to cast that spell for free without paying its mana cost. It's like a kind of 4-shot, a 4-time 1-shot omniscient. You get to play 4 cards for free, real cards, each time you get the ETB on this dinosaur. So you play it for 7 mana. You get 4 cards cast for free, and they're going to be gas cards. Well, I mean, occasionally you're going to hit like a counter spell that doesn't do anything, or I don't know, like a removal spell without a target or something. But you know, a lot of times you're going to hit a demonic tutor, and you're going to put a combo together. The main thing that people are going to be doing with this most of the time is they're going to be using Food Chain and Squee, which Food Chain's kind of hard to find in the deck, so that's one reason I decided to go with more combos. But Food Chain says you can exile a creature to add X plus 1 mana, where X is the exiled creature's mana cost. So if you exile a 2-mana creature to Food Chain's an enchantment. If you exile a 2-mana creature to it, you're going to go up 3 mana. You can only use that mana to cast creatures, but usually you're going to be using that mana to cast Etali over and over. Even if you have Etali out with Food Chain, you can exile Etali to the Food Chain, making 8 mana. Then you only need to tap 1 more mana, and you can cast your Etali again. And that might not sound like a good plan, but man, like getting 8 cards, 8 Etali triggers, or 8 cards that you can cast for free off of all of you and your opponent's decks is kind of a big deal. But the main combo, I think, or maybe not the main combo, but one of the main combos that all of the decks seem to be playing is Food Chain plus Squee. So Squee over here is a goblin. You may cast Squee the Immortal from your graveyard or from exile. Now this is a bit of a dead card in the deck, but you can use it to do some things. You can like discard it to your Survival of the Fittest. You can cast it and sacrifice it to Eldritch Evolution to find your Temur Sabertooth. You can exile it to Chrome Mox, and then you could still cast it later from exile. So it's not totally dead, it's kind of dead. But it's like the only real dead. There's maybe 2 kind of dead cards in the deck. This is one of them, but with Squee and with Food Chain, you've got like Gamble for Food Chain, but also you're going to be exiling cards off your opponent's deck. So if you find a Demonic Tutor or a Vampiric Tutor, whatever, off of their deck, you can find your Food Chain, and your Squee should be easy to find. We've got lots of tutors for creatures. That's not a problem in Gruul. Well, it's not a problem in green. But anyway, we've got Food Chain, we've got Squee. Food Chain says we can exile Squee for 4 mana. Squee says we can cast it from exile, and its cast cost is 3 mana. So we exile our Squee to the Food Chain, that makes 4 mana. We're going to use 3 of that 4 mana to cast Squee again. Then we're going to exile that Squee to the food chain, making 4 mana, using 3 of that 4 mana to cast it, exile it, cast it, exile it. And since it costs 3 to cast, but you make 4 every time you exile it, you're going to go up 1 mana each time. And you can like get infinite red mana first, and then you can go through the loop again and make all the green mana you need, but really you just need red mana because Etali's cast cost is red. And the way we're going to finish our little Squee food chain combo is by casting Etali, or if it's already in play, we exile Etali to the food chain. It goes back into the command zone. We don't care because we've got infinite mana. Cast Etali, get the Etali trigger, exile the Etali to the food chain, cast the Etali, infinite. We just keep casting Etali until we put something together. Whether that be putting a breach win line together from one of your opponent's decks or 2 of your opponent's decks, or finding a Thassa's Oracle in one deck, Demonic Consultation in another, and winning the game that way, or just finding a tutor, or even just casting a shared summons, which I think should be in more decks. I don't think it's in many of these decks, but well, then again, I guess they're not playing that many A+B creature combos, and I sort of am playing a couple extras. But I'm playing ones that layer and that have like usefulness inside the deck generally. But shared summons, if you hit your shared summons off the top of your deck while you're flipping for Etali, you can assemble a combo. So let's say you get a demonic tutor and Squee, or a demonic tutor and food chain. You assemble your combo, you win the game, right? Or if you just flip a summoners or a shared summons off the top of your own deck, you can assemble your other major combo that appears in, I think, virtually all CDH versions of Etali, which is Temur Sabertooth with Dockside Extortionist. Most of the time in a CDH game, by turn 2, your Dockside's going to make 3 or 4 treasures. That could be conservative even, and by turn 3 it's going to make like 5 or 6 treasures, and by the time you're really looking to win the game, it's going to make at least 6, but it only has to make 5. As long as Dockside Extortionist makes 5 treasures, you can go infinite with Temur Sabertooth, and if you can go infinite with Temur Sabertooth and Dockside, you can win the game with Etali, kind of the same way we were doing with Food Chain, but here we're going to cast the Dockside for 2 mana, say we make 5 treasures. Now we're going to pay 2 mana to return Dockside Extortionist to your hand using your Temur Sabertooth, giving your Temur Sabertooth indestructible till end of turn. You've still got 3 treasures. Crack 2 of those 3 to cast your Dockside again, making 5 treasures. You're going to keep doing that. You're going to crack 2 of those treasures, return it to your hand with Temur. Use 2 of those treasures, cast it again, make 5 more treasures each time. If you make at least 5, you're netting 1 treasure per iteration. Once you've got 1 billion treasures, you start using Etali and Temur Sabertooth, and you just bounce Etali to your hand, cast it, bounce it to your hand, cast it, bounce it to your hand, cast it. And you kill people with their own deck. That's the fun thing, and really that's like plan A. With the deck is you're going to just get this dude out and start making copies of him, bouncing him, cloning him, and killing people with their own stuff. What are the combos? So I want to talk about the combos that are kind of unique includes in my deck, and maybe we'll talk about some of the things I opted out of. Well, let's go into the things I included. So I do have one sort of dead card in Combat Celebrant. I mean, it is kind of a dead card. You can get a lot of damage in with it. I mean, I guess it's not totally dead. You could build up a board state, and you could get 2 attacks off with it. Maybe you've got like maybe you've got your Italian play, and you flip it, and you can kill 2 people instead of 1. That's a thing that could happen. Or you have Hellkite Courser out and get 2 combats. Does this thing work when Hellkite enters the battlefield? No. Okay. So yeah, it's a little dead. But the thing is that we have 2 cards that are going to combo with it, where we can actually win with the cards in our own deck. One of them is Rionya Fire Dancer, which is going to be in any Etali. Like, this is one of the best cards in the deck, right? Like, Rionya, if you're not familiar, is a crazy card. I have a Rionya budget deck, $100. It's a Hundo Dancer. Busted, right? Like, even if you don't cast any spells, when you go to combat, you make at least one copy of any creature that you have, which of course if you build around can be pretty crazy. In this case, in this deck, even if you don't have any other cast trigger, if you don't have any other cards that you've cast before you go to combat, you make one extra Etali each turn, like minimum. But if you, let's say you have Etali out and you use like two rituals to cast Rionia, or like a mana rock, and no, it's got to be rituals. It only counts sorceries and instants. So say you play like a Rite of Flame and Jeska's Will, and then you go into Rionia, you go to combat, now you've cast two spells, and by spell I mean sorcery or instant, and you get one automatically. So you're going to actually end up making 3 copies of Etali that combat. I mean, that probably just ends the game in all reality. Like, once you get the hang of the deck, I think that does just end the game most of the time. So Rionia is obviously just a busted card in the deck, and so I think Kiki-Jiki is also at least playable. In full disclosure, to be totally honest, I put the card in thinking it could copy Etali, but it can't. But I still think it's pretty good because we have a bunch of ETBs, and there's ways where we can kind of get it to quasi-copy Etali. But I mean, we've got, look at all the creatures we have that have enter the battlefield effects. We can use Kiki-Jiki to copy Dockside Extortionist. Seems pretty good. Eternal Witness. We can make a copy of Eternal Witness and get a regrowth every turn. So we can turn, it makes like a little value engine. We can use Hellkite Courser to put our commander into play and then bring it back to the command zone, and we can do that with Kiki-Jiki every turn. We can keep tutoring for things with Imperial Recruiter. Really, I guess realistically, we're just gonna, if we have Imperial Recruiter, we can find our Kiki-Jiki with it, and then we can cast our Kiki-Jiki, and we can tap the Kiki-Jiki to make a copy of Imperial Recruiter. And when we get the copy of Imperial Recruiter, we find Combat Celebrant. So this again is that kind of dead card. But it just wins the game with Kiki-Jiki, right? So Combat Celebrant allows you to exert it. That just means it wouldn't untap on your next turn, but there's not going to be a next turn. Because if Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do, untap all other creatures you control. And then there's another combat phase after this combat phase. So you can go infinite by making a copy of it with Kiki-Jiki, and then when you have your combat, you untap all your things, including Kiki-Jiki, you make a copy of it. The copy hasn't been exerted yet, so you can just make infinite combats with that and Kiki-Jiki. Or you can also use Rionia to make infinite combats with Combat Celebrant. And the reason this works, and you don't even need to cast another spell. If you just have nothing but a Rionia and a Combat Celebrant, you go to combat, Rionia is going to trigger, make a copy of Combat Celebrant, and your Combat Celebrants are going to exert, giving you an extra combat step. Rionia triggers on your combat step, so when you go back to your next combat step, you're going to make another copy of Combat Celebrant, which is going to give you another attack phase, over and over and over. So I thought it was worth it. If we're playing Rionia, then it's not the worst thing to play Combat Celebrant. It's not an awful card. And if we're playing Rionia, we're playing Combat Celebrant, and we're playing Imperial Recruiter, we might as well play Kiki-Jiki. So we've got like a little bit of layered goodness. I like layered decks, and I think they're the most fun to play. They're the most fun to brew. They allow for the most kind of like big brain moments, and there's things you can do with Jaxus along this line too. But I don't want to spend a billion years talking about these little combos. The other obvious combo, I don't know if this is in all the decks. I have to assume this is in all the decks. So you're going to play Twinflame, Heat Shimmer, and the new one, Molten Duplication, in like probably 100% of these decks. I cannot imagine why you wouldn't. I was just checking the time. And since you're going to play these copy spells anyway, just to, you play out your Etali turn 2 or 3, and then you immediately copy it, and it just starts to snowball out of control and go off. Like sometimes you're going to make a copy that's going to copy into a copy. So since you're going to be playing Twinflame, molten, duplication, and heat shimmer anyway, you might as well play Dualcaster Mage. If you're not familiar with how that works, if you have any other creature in play, you can cast twinflame, for instance. Copying, say, your doesn't matter Sylvan Safekeeper. So you cast twinflame on the Sylvan Safekeeper. You hold priority, so you don't pass priority. Before anybody gets another thing, another action, you get another action, and your other action is going to be responding to your twinflame by casting Dualcaster Mage. You'll flash in Dualcaster Mage. When Dualcaster Mage comes into play, it's going to make a copy of target instant or sorcery spell. And the sorcery or instant spell you're going to copy is going to be twinflame. So the twinflame is going to make a copy of the Dualcaster Mage. The Dualcaster Mage is going to make a copy of the twinflame. And so on and so forth. It's going to keep happening over and over until you have made 1 billion Dualcaster Mages and 2 Sylvan Safekeepers, importantly. Not really. I mean, you will, but not importantly. And then you're going to go to combat with, an armada of infinite or a billion hasty Dualcaster mages and make all of your opponents very dead, with cards mainly that you want to play anyway. And Dualcaster Mage is even less dead than Combat Celebrant. Like, Dualcaster Mage, I mean, it's not great, but it's not the worst. It's actually pretty good inside the deck. In a way, right? Like, when you're flipping cards off the top of your deck, if you flip into somebody's, like, let's say you flip into one person's, I don't know, maybe that somebody else is playing Shared Summons, not impossible, and you flip into your Dualcaster, or hell, you might flip into somebody else's Dualcaster and your Shared Summons. Well, you can copy the Shared Summons with the Dualcaster Mage, and you can find 4 creatures and put them in your hand. Or if somebody has an Ad Nauseam that comes up, well, so you could play this out of your hand as interaction, basically. Or when it flips off the top of the deck, it can copy whatever the best thing is that you're being able to cast off your Etali trigger. So it actually isn't bad in the deck. Somebody counterspells your whatever, and you can flash in Dualcaster Mage, which will copy their counterspell and counterspell their counterspell with your Dualcaster Mage, and you get to have a body in play. And because we were smart enough to include Kiki-Jiki, we can also hold up our Kiki-Jiki with Dualcaster Mage, so we've got a piece of instant speed interaction at our beck and call. So the next time somebody tries to do a thing, we can tap Kiki-Jiki, copy our Dualcaster Mage, and copy their thing, whatever they're trying to do. What else? Is there anything else that's really kind of interesting before we just go into some playtest hands? Those are the combos, right? We're going to Kiki-Jiki, Combat Celebrant, win the game. We are going to Rionia Fire Dancer, Combat Celebrant, win the game. We are going to value all over people's faces with all of our value creatures, and we're going to be copying a bunch with all of our copy spells. We've got just massive amounts of mana, plenty of tutors, a pretty good little swath of interaction here, considering we're Gruul. We've got both of our blasts. We've got Red Blast, Pyro Blast. We've got Deflecting Swat. Archdruid's Charm is a new one, but I think it's super good. I think this should be in just about all green X decks. Like, if you're a 2-color or a 1-color deck and you're green, you should play this. It just has so many modes. Like, search your library for a creature or a land, or you can put a +1 counter on a target creature and have it deal damage to another creature. So like Etali can just deal 8 damage for this with this card. Or you can exile, so that means it can get rid of the One Ring. Exile target artifact or enchantment. So how many modes is that? Tutor a land, tutor a creature, kill a thing, well, kill a creature, or exile an artifact, or exile an enchantment. That's 5 things. That's great. That's fantastic. We like that. And if you flip this off the top of your deck, you don't have to worry about the green being sort of a prohibitive mana cost. What else did I add? I added this sort of Hearth and Home. I think it's cute, like, it's not that much mana. Our deck shits out mana like it's its job to shit out mana. 5 mana is surprisingly very little. To make sure that you get an extra copy of Etali every turn, and you're doing other things with it. It doesn't have to copy Etali, and it also, what is the other thing it does? It gets a land. So you're also just running out more and more lands. I'm a big believer in Sylvan Library. I'm probably going to play this card until they take it away from me, and apparently everybody thinks it sucks. They're wrong, but everybody thinks it sucks, so they're never going to take it away from me, and that's fantastic. Survival of the Fittest is maybe the best card in green. We were talking about interaction. Oh, there's another copy, Effect Curse Mirror. So the interaction that I'm playing that a lot of decks aren't, obviously we're going to play Veil. Sometimes Noxious Revival acts as interaction. Somebody goes to Breach and you can Noxious Revival, because you can take things out of their graveyards and put them on their top deck. I've done this plenty of times. It happens more often than you'd think. Somebody tries to cast Animate Dead on Razakath, or somebody tries to like target a creature in their graveyard with a thing that you don't want them to. Maybe they're going to try to put their dockside back into play and start storming off. You're playing against Corvold, and instead you cast Noxious Revival and you put their dockside on top of their deck, and then they have to wait until their next turn to cast that and start doing crazy things. Noxious Revival can be good interaction, but really the reason I think it's like so important to have in this deck, and why it's really kind of broken in this deck, is because you can set. Remember, Etali is going to exile cards off the top of people's decks until it exiles a non-land card, and it's going to cast it. Well, with this Noxious Revival, you can pick a thing in a graveyard that you explicitly want or need to exile. Delayed Blast Fireball is also really good, synergistic in the deck, because it says on the card it deals 2 damage normally, but if it's cast from exile, which you'd usually do by paying its Foretell cost, but not always. Sometimes you're just going to flip off of you're going to flip it off the top with Etali, which does count as casting it from exile. So it's going to deal 5 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. So basically, it's just a 3-sided board wipe. It's going to wipe everybody's board but yours. So some of the interaction. Here's one that people don't play, and it's another one I think is insane to not play. Guys, like, this is a hot take. This is the best card green has got in forever. I put it above the Bad Veil. Not the Bad Veil. The Veils are both good, but I put it on par with Veil of Summer. I mean, I really do. I've played with the card. I've played against it, a Selvala deck. I've played against it in a Selvala deck. I've played against it in Raga Draga. This freaking card does so many things. For 1 mana, it can protect your creature. It gives it hexproof, right? But it's split second, so nobody can respond to it, so they can't counter it or fuck with it. Then it untaps a creature. So let's say this happens during combat. Or what if you've already attacked and it happens during your opponent's combat? You can cast it on your creature, untap your creature. It gains reach, so you block the creature even if it has flying. So you block it with your Dino, kill it. And then if you can find a way to tap it, or if it's a creature that can tap like a Kiki-Jiki, you can shoot things down with it. But most of the time it's just an uncounterable piece of interaction that's protection. Somebody tries to kill your thing and you're like, nope, I think I'd rather you didn't kill my thing. And they're like, oh, I've got a counter spell for that. But you're like, doesn't matter. Split second, you lose. This card's busted. It's busted. This is going to be in more decks by the end of this year, you watch. Like, I could see this in 5-color decks. Honest to God. I think it's that good. If you've got creatures that care about tapping. And honestly, we don't have that many, but we do have some. I think it's worth the include here. Okay, what else? So yeah, Survival of the Fittest is a reason to be in green. It's going to find and piece together your creature combos. It's a good way to spend your squee. You can pitch your squee to get your Survival of the Fittest. No, you can pitch your squee to your Survival of the Fittest to find the creature you actually want. We're at 28 minutes 42 seconds. Maybe I've cut something out. I wanted to go to hands to make that a second video. Let's make that a second video. So this is what our first starting hand would look like. Isn't that crazy? Like, this is what they all look like. So we would just like play our land, play our vault, whatever, go to our next turn, run out our. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're almost there. So we would, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're 1 mana shy of having a turn 2 Etali here. So probably we would just, I don't know, maybe develop our Minxkimbu, or no, we do, yeah, drop this fucker out, blow something up, and when we find our Kiki-Jiki, which I was very smart to add, we'll be able to copy this every turn and blow up a thing every turn with it. We go to our next turn. And we play our land, and we tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh shit, I did have enough mana to cast it last turn, didn't I? Oh, whatever, we cast it this turn. Bam. 1 mana floating. We get an Etali trigger. Ours gets an Ewit, which we pick up, I don't know, whatever. With, and somebody else, I don't know. You know, it's impossible to goldfish the deck, honestly. But you get the idea. There's probably a turn 2 if I think I might have counted wrong. But certainly a turn 3. Oh, I had this. I could have gone, well, whatever. We're going to end this video. I'm going to do a whole thing on starting hands next. I think we're at about the 30-minute point. Until next time, my homies, I hope you liked the CEDH deck tech. This is a kind of a cursory look, and then we'll go into, in the next video, starting hands. If you don't like the CEDH stuff, if my peeps that are starting to build up, if my audience doesn't really care that much about actual full-powered CEDH, then I guess thumbs down the video or tell me in the comments. Definitely tell me in the comments. If you tell me in the comments, I'll stop doing it. If you do like these, I'll do more of them. Let me know that in the comments too. Until next time, may all your hands be the nuts and all your outs be live, and live long and prosper. May the force be with you. If you can't have the one you love the one you have. And namaste, homies.